This is the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show, sponsored by your North Texas Chevy dealers. Together, let's drive.
It feels like we should have just left an empty chair there for Andrew Cely. Off tonight on his Thanksgiving break. He's risen to the top of the food chain rather quickly here in the WFA Sports Department.
Wow, what an open. Wow, what is going on here?
I've risen in the ranks, Joe.
I guess you have.
Clearly, a reporter of esteemed value has said something that is known to all in this station. I have risen in the ranks. We're ready to go.
Wow, that is fantastic. We are off and running. Welcome to Ultimate Dallas Sports Show, or should I call it the half hour that Andrew built. Andrew Cely is the producer of this show.
Not even.
And we're having some fun tonight. Andrew did do a lot of great work to get this show together for you. And so why don't you tell us what we got going on today?
Well, let's just kick it off. Let's get into what's on the show.
Here's What's on the Show, sponsored by NFM.
Like the Black Knight and Monty Python and the Holy Grail, the Cowboys still are not dead yet. And they did something today they haven't done in nearly a year, win a game in blowout fashion against the Panthers. Sure, 30-14. We'll get into what we should take away from that performance. And it's the return of my favorite game and Michelle's least favorite game, no fence riding. It's back, this time with a focus on college football and the WNBA. That's what's on the show, Joe. Now, who is on the show?
All right, we got a great show. In fact, we got a couple of guys who have made their way back from the Cowboys game against the Carolina Panthers. They're both on that charter. They both made it back home, and they are both on the show tonight. Our own Mike Leslie, and also for the first time on the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show, the man himself, Bobby Belt. Hey, Bobby, how you doing, brother?
I am wonderful. Thanks for having me.
No, man, we're so happy to have you on the show. Bobby, as you know, does great work at The Fan. He's also done great work for NFL Network. He is a true Cowboys insider. All right, you guys, so let's jump off. And since I gave you that great intro, Bobby, now let's see if you can prove to everyone that I'm right. What was your biggest takeaway from what you saw today? The Cowboys with a really good performance against a really bad Panthers team that had been playing a little bit better as of late. But again, awful showing today from the Panthers.
Yeah, I mean, I actually had picked Carolina to win this game. I thought that Bryce Young was playing really well, and I thought that, you know, it was something where Dallas was going to have trouble kind of keeping up if they were going to be committed to trying to throw the football. There have been different times this year where Mike McCarthy has just not been willing to stick to the run, even when it's working. And I thought we were getting into a little bit of that early in this one, where Rico Dowdle carries the ball the first 3 times, and you're like, okay, having some success there. And then I think it was 5 or 6 of the next 7 plays they called pass plays. And then, of course, Carolina kind of goes on that methodical drive to open it up. But it was good to see them really commit to letting Rico Dowdle do what he's been trying to do for several weeks, which is kind of set the tone with physicality and an offensive line that, with all the moving parts and all the things they've swapped out, has become a very physical, kind of violent play style there. And I think that's kind of been their identity the last 3 weeks, and what they're going to lean into the rest of the way is just they are a tough, physical, running football team, and it was on display again today.
I do like the way that they got back to the run, and you're right. There was a pass play, then a penalty, and another couple pass plays, and I'm like, come on, McCarthy, don't fall into that same trap that we have seen you fall into so many times. And to his credit, got back to run the football, and especially after there was some juggling on that line as well, with some nicks and bruises happening during the game. Mike, I am curious about perspective when it comes to what we're seeing, right? Because we have seen this running game do much better. Rico Dowdle with his 3rd straight 100-yard outing. But again, 2 of those defenses are 2 of the worst in the NFL when you think about playing against the Giants and then today against the Panthers. So how do you put it in perspective, Mike?
I mean, I think it's got to be a positive, at least for Rico Dowdle. He's the first undrafted player to rush for 100-plus yards in 3 straight games since Arian Foster in 2014. So what he's doing is at least noteworthy insofar as that. Sure, it's against defenses that aren't exactly spectacular. And shoot, I think you mentioned the Giants and the Panthers defenses. The Bengals certainly aren't spectacular either. None of these defenses are terribly good. So sure, you got to grade it on the curve a little bit and understand that this isn't him rushing against the Ravens defense or something of that ilk. But it's 100-plus yards in the NFL. These are still NFL defenses, and it's not nothing. And 25 for 149 is not your run-of-the-mill 100-yard rushing performance either. So Yes. Is it the same as doing this against a top quality defense? No. But there still has to be a decent bit of credit given to Rico Dowdle for being finally given this opportunity to be RB1 and taking the reins the way that he has.
If you guys saw me gesturing, there's a reason. I wanted to let the director know, here's what I want to show. We like to have fun on this show. Mike, your background is fantastic. It's immaculate. Can we go full on Mike? All right, listen. You know, there's a whole website that likes to grade backgrounds, and normally they grade the backgrounds in houses. But you got the outside look with the with the Christmas special light yard behind you. Strong, Michael. Very strong.
I can't take credit for the Christmas lights behind me. All I got is here and what's on the house that you can't see. I'm out on the front porch trying not to wake up the toddler and the newborn. So this is where I landed.
Necessity is the mother of invention, and it worked out quite well for you on this night. So, Andrew, what'd you take away from this game? What really jumped out to you in terms of how the Cowboys were able to manipulate the Panthers today?
I think the big thing for me was just how relaxed I was throughout the second half. Most of these games have been back and forth. I mean, literally, the long 83-yard touchdown right before the end of the first half was kind of the warning shot to be like, oh no, are we about to run into this again? But it was just kind of methodical. Fumble coming out of the second half, key turnovers. It just felt like the defensive line specifically felt we need to take ownership of this game. Micah Parsons getting in there with a couple sacks and seeing them rise to the occasion of a team that literally almost beat the Eagles last week, I think was a big tell. And it's been nice to see them. Again, this is a team, at least where the Panthers are concerned, that I think had this happened earlier in the year, this is a team the Cowboys would have stumbled on very easily. And it just kind of felt like finally we can move through a game and not deal with a lot of drama surrounding it.
Yeah, no doubt. And I do want to talk more about the defense in a moment, because I do think that Mike Zimmer has figured out some things. He's figured out how to employ a lot of these pieces. And I think the biggest thing in terms of what happened with the Cowboys on this day, they got a lead. And we know what happens when they get a lead. They can be themselves. They can get after the passer the way that this team is constructed, especially on the defensive side of the ball. That's what they're made for. So Mike Zimmer was really able to unleash this Cowboys defense in a way that we really haven't seen it a whole lot this year, because they haven't had that kind of lead. And you see what can happen, especially against a bad team. And that's what we're going to talk more about with our guest coming up after the break. But right now, we do have to pay a few bills. But keep it here on the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. We're talking more about Mike Zimmer and that defense after the break.
Today's headlines, sponsored by your North Texas Chevy dealers.
Elsewhere around the NFC East, the Eagles rough up the Steelers in Philly 27-13. Philadelphia now 12-2 overall and still battling for that top spot in the NFC. And the Commanders survive a late rally from the Saints in New Orleans to win 20-19. The Commanders still in possession of that final wild card spot. The best thing about that division update, no longer have to care about the Giants. They lost to the Ravens today anyway. Joe, tossing it over to you. You want to bring up the defense? Go for it, man.
I don't care about the Giants at all anyway, especially this year. They're awful. Listen, I do want to talk more about this defense, because we have seen Mike Zimmer continue to put his fingerprints. And I think this game today is the perfect example of a veteran like Mike Zimmer going up against a young and inexperienced quarterback. And we saw what he can do in terms of pressure packages and making Bryce Young look incredibly uncomfortable. So I want to talk more now with Bobby Belt of 105.3 The Fan, because Bobby really does have his pulse, his hand on the pulse over there at the Star. What'd you think about the performance today and the continued improvement from Mike Zimmer's crew, Bobby?
Yeah, I mean, you bring up the fact that he did a really good job pressuring Bryce Young and forcing him into some bad decisions. That actually had been the biggest difference we had seen from Bryce Young in recent weeks when he was playing better, was he was better against pressure. The first year and a half that he was with Carolina, he was one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. The last 3 weeks against playoff teams, Kansas City, Tampa Bay, Philadelphia, he had performed much better, and that kind of been the difference for them, was extending plays and hitting big plays and not panicking, but playing with some urgency. And so that was something that they were going to have to worry about today, was even if you got pressure, how much was it going to rattle him? Because he was looking more and more like Alabama Bryce Young. But, they were able to get to him and force him into some bad decisions. And I think with Mike Zimmer specifically, this has just been something where he runs such a complex scheme, coverage-wise, blitz concepts, other things like that. it was going to take some time for guys to adjust. He needed the first half of the season to figure out, all right, what pieces do I have? How can I mix and match them? What do they excel at? What do they struggle with? And I think he's found his rhythm a little bit, and he's figured out what his guys can do. And he's changing some different things. We've seen in the last several weeks, Micah Parsons has been lighting up at defensive tackle more in the last 4 weeks than he has his entire career. There was a snap today on third down where Micah Parsons is at defensive tackle and Oso Digizua, a defensive tackle by trade, is way out wide playing defensive end. And so he's doing some creative things and using his personnel to their maximum capabilities. And I think he deserves a ton of credit for getting this defense to play pretty well over the last 4 weeks.
No, I think you're right about that. And the interesting point is, and this is a much larger discussion, but I do think the point needs to be made is, now that we're seeing this from Mike Zimmer, if he ends up being one and done as the defensive coordinator here, it would almost be a shame. And I don't know if Mike Zimmer, with the way this defense has continued to improve, could be an option if the Cowboys want to move on from Mike McCarthy. My gut says no. But it's very interesting the way that this thing is kind of turning and evolving. But before we get into that bigger discussion about the coach, Mike, I want you to kind of weigh in and chime in here on the Ian Rappaport report from NFL Network about the possibility of the Cowboys trading Micah Parsons and not having ruled that out. And listen, let's be clear here. I don't think it's going to happen. Stephen Jones said that he doesn't see a scenario where it could happen, but it was reported, and you were able to speak to Micah about said report.
Yeah, listen, I got a bunch of messages on Facebook and Twitter over the course of today, like, is this really going to happen? And to each of them, my response is, I don't think so. I doubt it. This doesn't feel realistic. It feels like some negotiating in public. It feels like some, hey, let's make sure we're still staying on the top of ESPN.com and making sure that we're being talked about as much as possible, because
the Cowboys never do that. What are you talking about, Mike?
You guys saw the crowd there in Carolina today. It was sparse. The on-field product is not bringing people to the television screen right now, so you got to find some other way to drum up some conversation about the Dallas Cowboys, and this is a very convenient way to do so. No, I don't think that it's realistic. I thought it was interesting that Parsons' reaction to it today was so matter of fact and, hey, business is business, and whatever this is, it'll be. I don't think he's terribly worried about it. I think if he was actually worried about it, we may have seen a little more emotion in that moment, a little bit more of a plea or something along those lines of, hey, no, I don't want to go anywhere. I want to be here. I don't think he's terribly concerned, and I don't think Cowboys fans should be terribly concerned. And honestly, if this were to materialize, it would have to be for a ridiculous draft haul, which in that case, it would have to be massive for it to be worth it. So if it's going to be that massive, maybe it'll be worth it.
Now, it's an interesting discussion. I don't see a world in where it happens. He's such a difference maker. You just don't find those types of players. The defense is built around him, and we saw, vestiges of that on this day of just what he can be. All right, listen, I do want to put a bow on that because, Bobby, before we stop our overall discussion, I do want to hear about you on this kind of global question because I want your thoughts on it in terms of where we are with Mike McCarthy. And listen, this team they didn't quit on him, but that's a really low bar. And they're beating some bad teams here. What do you think it all means for the future of Mike McCarthy, Bobby?
Yeah, I do think, you talk about they haven't quit on him. That feels like a low bar. I think that this team set such low expectations through the first 6 to 7 weeks of the season that I do wonder if, are we lending too much credence to the idea of, yeah, you executed. You didn't have a bunch of just bad penalties or dumb turnovers or things like that. And, it's just kind of like, hey, look, baby steps. We're happy with this. And so I do think they played better. I think it needs to be put in the context of who are they going up against and what's the standard. And what was the standard supposed to be for Mike McCarthy? Because 12-5 3 years in a row and winning division titles and winning a playoff game, first road playoff game in 30 years, that wasn't good enough to get him an extension. And, we asked Jerry this last Tuesday where he's talking about all these great things about Mike McCarthy. And I said, okay, if these are all these great things, then I'm going to lend them to you. I'll give them to you. They're true. Okay. Let's say they're true. And that's all 100% correct. Then what are you waiting for? Why doesn't he have a new contract? The fact that he doesn't have a new contract, I think, speaks volumes. And I don't think just a lot of effort or a nice storybook ending about how they all came together and rallied as a close family is enough to overshadow 8-9 after you were a 12-win team for 3 years in a row, and there was a lot of pressure on you after that. So I think ultimately the likeliest scenario is he's gone. But it's something where I'm never going to say never, because there's certainly a case to be made that Jerry Jones could look at this and say, we've got a tight setup for the next couple of years. Might as well just have him see us through the next couple, and then we'll reset when we know what we're going to be.
I think it's great perspective. I think you're spot on. And listen, the bottom line for me is I judge him by the way they played against the Ravens and the Lions and some of those other games where they were completely uncompetitive against the Eagles as well. All these teams in the division as well as in the conference that they have to play better against. All right, we will be back. Right now, we're about to have some fun. It's time to gamify the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. The producer's taking over. Look out, because he's rising in the ranks. We'll have that for you later.
Sunglasses optional.
And now it's time for No Fence Riding, sponsored by the Fort Worth Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Welcome back to the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. Time now for No Fence Riding. The concept is simple. I have a trio of statements to give to our esteemed panel. It's their job to not fence ride. Pick one side or the other. I will call you out for it. I know I will. I know Mike will. Maybe Joe will. He tends to be a little waffly sometimes. Either way, let's get right into it with our first statement. Here we go. First statement, UNC's Bill Belichick experiment will not work. Obviously, Belichick made headlines this week by going to UNC, foregoing the NFL potentially, whether it was by force, by choice, however you want to break it down. Either way, this is nice on paper that he's going back to his home where his dad coached. This ain't going to last long. Maybe 2 years, and he's out of there, at least as far as I'm concerned. Bobby, I'll set you up for this one. What do you think?
Yeah, it's not going to work. This is going to be Bill Walsh going back to Stanford in the mid-90s, which is also the only example we've ever got of somebody winning a Super Bowl and then going back to college coaching afterwards. We've had college coaches win Super Bowls before, but nobody's gone back after winning one, other than Bill Walsh, who it was kind of a homecoming for him. I'll be honest, I think there's a reason that the entire NFL had passed on him 2 off seasons in a row. And that it took him basically, as reports said this weekend, going back with his hands placed together, begging Woody Johnson for a job. That's the bottom. So that tells me he's not coming into UNC with the right mindset. And I think he's going to find college to be just as challenging as his close friend Nick Saban did. And so, no, I don't think this is going to work terribly well. Not that they can't win 8-9 games or something like that one of these years, but it's not going to be any sort of a juggernaut.
Mike, quick, do you think there's a chance or no?
Listen, it's not going to last very long just because of the fact that he's as old as he is. So the fact that it's only going to last 2 or 3 years feels kind of obvious, regardless of whether it's successful or not. I do think that if he brings his son in there and can have somebody else kind of doing the recruiting, there's going to be players that want to play for him. I do think that there's at least a possibility that this could work.
Joe, yes or no?
By work, winning a championship, going deep in the playoff,
Well,
no, I don't think so. But they can get respectability back to that program. Like Bobby said, 8-9 wins. It's the ACC. They can vie for a conference championship.
Trying to change the definition of this.
Well, you didn't give the definition of it, so I'm giving one. No, it won't work.
Fair enough. All right, let's move on to statement number 2 here. The NFL should be concerned about the rise of college football, specifically with the playoffs now being scheduled on Sundays. Again, we're talking about college becoming more professional overall. And now they're encroaching on the NFL's territory where it's starting to ruffle a little bit of feathers. We saw a little bit of news making about it. Mike, I'll set you up for this one. Keep it a little bit short. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I think they should be concerned. And I think the big reason why they should be concerned is because players are making decisions based on NIL money. There's some guys, Shedeur Sanders namely, who might be taking a haircut getting drafted into the NFL this spring. There is serious money in college football, and those kinds of conversations are happening right now. Yeah, the college football world is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and yeah, it's encroaching on the NFL landscape.
Bobby, jump in here.
It's blending with the NFL landscape. I think this is something that's good for the NFL. The NFL wants more continuity. It's why quarterbacks we've seen, they don't have that same learning curve that they always have. I think the NFL likes the idea of let's blend concepts. Let's make things as prepared as we can. But yeah, also know your place. You're not going to encroach on us. We're going to respect Saturdays, but you're going to respect Sundays and Mondays and Tuesdays and whatever other day they want to be on. But yeah, I think overall this is helpful for the NFL.
The NFL doesn't have to worry at all. It's just going to end up being a minor league for the NFL, and it's going to be more well put together. And so some of the players will end up being better acclimated to what the NFL will be all about. That's part of what Nick Saban is doing, trying to create an NFL program on a college campus. So no, it's not going to hurt the NFL at all, you guys. I think it's only going to make it easier for players to make that jump, and that'll help the product in the NFL. Will things be more interesting in college as well? Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, you guys, listen. Great stuff. Michael, thanks so much. I'll see you tomorrow. Bobby Belt, thanks for your maiden voyage on the program. We can't wait to have you back, brother. Great stuff. We appreciate y'all, and we'll be back with a final word after this.
Welcome back to the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. Joe, normally I would toss it to you for final take, so please do not play the animation right now. But no, like this is a perfect opportunity to bring up something that struck me. North Crowley football.
Oh.
I know we've spent the last couple of years penciling in Duncanville, DeSoto, and Sauk as the three premier programs heading to state. Two of those three aren't going to make it this year. North Crowley now representing South Lake Carroll in the other one. This is pretty remarkable to see what Ray Gates has done with that program.
Listen, Ray Gates deserves so much credit for what he's been able to do. Because, listen, he was going up against the godfather in Reginald Samples at Duncanville with great talent. When you think about the quarterback there, Keelan Thompson, and you think about DeCorian Moore, one of the best 1-2 punches, not just in Texas, but in the entire country. And for Ray Gates to pull it off the way he did, fantastic stuff at North Crowley. I will say this, we knew it was coming.
Right.
I don't know if we thought it was going to be here this soon.
That's absolutely correct. And now it is time for Joe's final take.
I got a tip of the hat for Cowboys receiver CeeDee Lamb. Listen, he's been fighting that shoulder injury. He kept playing through it, and he got his reward today. He reached 1,000 yards for the season, and he becomes the first receiver in Cowboys history to reach 1,000 yards in 4 of his first 5 seasons. He showed a lot of chutzpah, a lot of fight, a lot of desire, the whole 9 yards to keep going when he was hurt in a lost season. It's the kind of thing you can hang your hat on. It's the kind of thing that will make teams better and make his teammates understand the kind of great leader that he can be. So kudos to my man, CeeDee Lamb. Great stuff there.
It's the case for all the leaders. Parsons stepping up. I mean, this is the kind of game and performance, when I was mentioning a couple of weeks back, that sometimes, bad habits can form in a season like this. Those are the kind of good habits that can linger, and that's important.
They just got to prove they can do it against really good competition, because that did not happen at all this season. So let's hope they can keep that feeling going. All right, great stuff out of Andrew Cely. That's all the time we have. Thanks so much for joining us on the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show.
This has been the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show, sponsored by your North Texas Chevy dealers. Together, let's drive.